Hi, I'm Kat Weldon and I want to talk to you about how to be a hero. How to be a Hero is a series of magical, funny, fast-paced adventures for 8 to 12-year-olds. These are the first two books in the series, How to be a Hero, and the second is called The Land of Lost Things. How to be a Hero is set in and inspired by the world of Norse mythology. By that, I mean the belief system held by the Vikings and Anglo-Saxons over 1,000 years ago. I was inspired to write these stories because I wanted to explore what it would be like to live in a world where they weren't just stories, but the actual reality of how things worked. In Norse mythology, the universe looks very different. Instead of stars and planets in a sort of solar system, they thought that we all lived in a giant tree called Yggdrasil. 9 worlds hang in the roots and branches of Yggdrasil, worlds full of gods, giants, dragons, and us. And I got to thinking. If we all live in a giant tree, what is to stop me climbing out of my world through the roots and branches and into another? And what would happen if I did? And what if someone a bit untrustworthy decided to do the same? Lotta is a trainee Valkyrie. It is her job to journey down from the world of the gods up at the top of the tree on her flying warhorse down to the human world below. There she used to find the best heroes and warriors and take them back to Valhalla, the Vikings' idea of paradise. Unfortunately, on Lotta's first trip to collect heroes, she picks up Whetstone instead, a scruffy orphan who's fallen in with a bad crowd. Whetstone has just been persuaded to steal a magical talking cup, and he is definitely not a hero. Now Lotta needs to find a way of getting him home again before anyone notices her mistake. But things are never that simple, because other people also want to get their hands on the magic talking cup and will do almost anything to get it. Now Whetstone and Lotta have to climb from one world to another, doing their best to avoid dragons, gods, and thieves on the way. In doing so, they discover that maybe there is more than one way to be a hero or a Valkyrie, and that maybe, just maybe, they really do need each other. How to be a Hero is a story full of dragons and disguises, adventures, and some really bad poetry. But it's also a story about friendship, bravery, and having the confidence to be who you really are inside. So, if you like funny Vikings, action-packed adventures, and lots of bickering, How to be a Hero is the book for you. The first book came out in January of this year, and the second book, Land of Lost Things, was published in July. The third instalment is due out in January next year. Stay tuned for a short reading from Chapter 1. Chapter 1. The Cup of Crud. Tonight we feast, tomorrow we fight. The enormous man, big enough to be 2 normal men but average-sized for 1 Viking, raised his drinking horn high into the air. Ale slopped out of it and rained down on those sitting around the rough wooden table. Another man raised his hand. Who are we fighting? Because we're not technically at war with anyone right now. The enormous man paused, his red face screwed up in thought. How about, tonight we feast, tomorrow we go on a nice picnic, the other Viking continued, mopping ale off his head with his sleeve. I like picnics. No, it's supposed to rain tomorrow, replied one with tufty hair tied back in pigtails. What about tonight we feast, tomorrow we pick our toenails? Or tonight we feast, tomorrow we press flowers. Ha!
after eating Ethel's cooking. Oh, it should be. Tonight we feast. Tomorrow we have toxic turnip breath, croaked a voice from the back. Several people grumbled in agreement, then ducked as Ethel threw a ladle across the room. A Viking with a dark, brushy beard climbed ponderously to his feet and silenced the room with a loud burp. Tonight we feast. Tomorrow we have an ultimate shin-kicking contest. This suggestion received an enormous cheer, the air filled with ale foam and half-chewed food as cups and plates were tossed towards the rafters. Unnoticed by anyone, a pale, scruffy boy put down the tray he carried and ducked out of the door. The boy's name was Whetstone. It wasn't a very good name, and he didn't like it very much, but it was all he had. Outside, the cool air tickled his white skin, making the hairs on his arms rise. Whetstone pulled his thin cloak around his shoulders and stepped away from the door. Cutting through the wispy clouds above him hung a bright yellow moon, giving him just enough light to see by. Behind him, in the great hall of Crud, the Vikings were still cheering. Whetstone had only been in the village for a couple of days, having managed to blag a job in the kitchens. It hadn't been hard. There wasn't exactly a queue to help clean up after Viking feasts. Trying to get the grease stains off the ceiling is a nightmare. All Vikings were the same, finding any excuse to guzzle and gorge all night until their already pink and blotchy faces grew even pinker and blotchier and they fell asleep under the table. Whetstone gazed up at the moon and grinned. They wouldn't be celebrating when they found out what his real plans were.